Alright, good day everyone, Steve Briggs here. So today's video will be based on route on a stick, and basically what route on a stick does, it allows devices on separate and different VLANs to communicate with each other. The older technology was the inter VLANs, and with inter VLANs, for every VLANs you needed a dedicated interface on the router. And that now you encounter problems because routers don't really carry much interfaces for like fast Ethernet and gigabit, whereas a switch now could have like 48 ports and so forth interfaces. So they created route on a stick, which is that you'll have one interface from the router to the switch, and then you do that connectivity via virtual interfaces. But before we go to that, I want to demonstrate and explain a little more on VLANs, the basics and stuff. So with VLANs segment networks. They break networks up. It is for security measures also. So for instance, you will have like here, this could be at the accounting apartment, and here you can have, this could be the engineering. The sweet thing with the VLANs is that you can be running one switch and you can have the same networks devices and running the same IP addresses, and they would not have a conflict because the devices are in separate VLANs. If you remove the VLANs, you're going to have conflict. So VLANs, in a sense, it separates, it helps you to reuse IP addresses. It also limits broadcast storms. What broadcast storms is that basically you will have a switch, say 24 ports, 2960 switch, and you'll have 23 devices connected. If one of those devices sends a broadcast, it goes to all the other 22 devices connected to that switch. And think about if each and every one of those devices were broadcasted, you see the problem you're going to encounter is going to limit bandwidth. And if you have things like voice over IP phones, you're going to have problems because bandwidth is going to be consumed by all these devices that's broadcasting and stuff. So we have a quick analogy here, a quick scenario actually, where I'll just have to put in some IP addresses quickly just to demonstrate. So I have to demonstrate what's happening here. So we have PC1, which carrying the IP address here, which is 1.1, and PC4 24 is 1.4. So I will do a ping right now, 192.168.1.4, and as you can see, we could ping because by default all these ports here are on VLAN 1, and I will show you that in the configurations here. If you do show VLAN, as you can see, default the VLAN 1 is default, and every single port on the switch is assigned to that. Now I'm going to create the VLANs and segment the traffic, and I'm going to show you what is going to happen. But before I do that, if I decide to go to PC 2.2 and assign the IP address 192.168.1.4, you will see this IP address is already used in the network because these devices have already broadcast their MAC address. The switch is registered, have registered these MAC addresses, and when you put in an IP address now, when that information is laced back to the switch is saying, hey, that IP address is already assigned to a device with this MAC address, so therefore you cannot use it. But I will show you the sweet part of VLANs. Okay, so we're going to configure terminal. There's a shortcut to it also, but for starters I'll just do it as it is here. Interface, range, fast Ethernet. I'm doing it this way for persons who are now getting in the groove of configuring switches and stuff. Fast Ethernet 1 to 2. So basically what I've done here is I've done a range. So instead of doing the individual ports, I did 2 of them at the same time. So it saves the headache of having to go and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Think about a 48 port switch if you have to do this. And you have 4 of those switches in your organization. It's very time consuming. So what we do now, we go switch port, mode, access, and we go switch port. This line here is given access, the mode is access, switch port, access, we're telling the interfaces to access VLAN switch port, access VLAN 5. So what this is saying now, VLAN 5 hasn't been created as yet, and this is something that I should have done earlier. I was supposed to create the VLAN, but when you do this, the switch will actually create the VLAN for you if you do these commands. So I will go back and show you now. Exit and show VLAN. So basically VLAN 5 was created and this is the default name, but I will want to change that. So I will go config T for short, VLAN 5, and I'll change it. I'll just type in name. I'll name my site 5. I will do another VLAN 10 also, and put name site 10. I'll type end and then I'll do show VLAN. Now with the show VLAN, you'll actually see the site 5 and the site 10. So not to confuse you, remember we already did the configuration here. We had the interface range fast Ethernet where we assigned fast Ethernet 1 and 2 to VLAN 5. But when we did that, the switch realized, hey, we don't have VLAN 5. So it created the VLAN 5 and it added the interfaces to it. So as we can see here, it was here already, but as we went down further and we did the change of name, you will see it came up at site 5 and the two interfaces are still there. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to assign the IP address of, not the IP address, but these devices to VLAN 10. So I do interface range, I do the shorthand now, fast Ethernet 0/3 to 4. Switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 10. So I can just type end and we'll do show VLAN, and what that is showing now is that okay, we have these two ports FA0/1 and 2 assigned to VLAN 5, FA0/3 and 4 assigned to VLAN 10. So the ports they are reconfiguring right now. So in the meantime, I will put in the IP address for this one here. I'll do 192.168.1.3. Alright, using /24, and I will demonstrate what we did earlier on. So we had this PC here using the IP address 192.168.1.4. So this PC is on VLAN 10, this one is on VLAN 5. So I'm going to use that same IP address and you're going to see. You see the IP address, the device took the IP address, because what this is saying here is that hey, this is a separate network here. So therefore I could reuse any IP address scheme that I had here across here, because these two devices, these two networks are separated. They're on two separate VLANs. So if I try to ping now, okay, I will get a ping, and the ping that I am getting is not from this PC, but actually this PC, because I assigned it with this IP address. So I will change this to 2 to show you that, listen, even if this PC across here is 1.4, they will not be able to communicate because they're on two separate VLANs. I'll close this off, close this, go back here, and I will do the ping now. So we will look and you'll see request timeout. So basically this is how basic VLANs operate. There are more to VLANs to configuring. You have those things like port fast, and when you are doing the voice over IP, I did a video also with voice over IP over WAN connections, and with that now you actually have to set up the voice VLANs and so forth. So what I'm going to do now, I'm switching across to the router and a stick. And what the router and a stick does is that when you have the two separate VLANs, you are able to communicate with each other via the router. The router, what it does, it takes the information and it routes the information across virtually, because with inter-VLAN, I'll just show you how inter-VLAN works. Inter-VLAN would have been like this. So for VLAN 5, we would have FA0/1 on this side and for VLAN 10 FA0 slash, well, FA0 slash 2, whatever the case may be. So we have FA0 slash 0, FA0 slash 1, or whatever the case may be for inter VLAN. But for starters, we go into this router and we'll just do a show IP interface brief. And to see what's happening here, so the two interfaces are down, no IP address. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna bring the interface up. I'm not assigning an IP address to the interface. I am just bringing the interface up, and we'll do the assignment of IP addresses to the virtual interfaces. So interface F fast Ethernet 0/0, no shutdown. So the interface will be up, but there is no IP address, so we cannot communicate. I will just quickly put in IP addresses here. To demonstrate what is really happening. So as it is here now, we could communicate with each other because we are on a switch network. We don't have the PCs don't have a default gateway, so therefore information wouldn't be going out to the router. So if I do a ping here, 192.168.1.1, we will ping. So this PC here 1.4 is pinging PC 1.1. What I'm doing now is I'm going to set up the router on a stick, but I will change this as to 1.2, and I'll show you why. When you configuring router on a stick, you setting up virtual interfaces. How do you set up virtual interfaces? Well, you set it up the same way as you do with a normal interface, but you do it interface FA0/0 dot, and you put the VLAN number, the fast Ethernet number. So therefore the number that you place here is a number that highlights, listen, I'm doing VLAN 5. You can use a whole range of numbers, but it wouldn't cause any problems. But when you set it in this manner, it brings light to the whole situation, that in future when you have to backtrack and do reconfigure, or maybe diagnose, you can look and say fast Ethernet /0/0.5 is a virtual interface assigned to VLAN 5. Okay, then you have here now, you have the encapsulation standard. .oq.iq, and with this now you have to put in the VLAN ID. So if you understand what I'm saying, this is the encapsulation standard. If you do not put this in, the interface will not work. And as they stated there, the IEEE, they have the information here and they want the VLAN ID. So to go in with sync properly, as you have the fast Ethernet 0/0.5, the 5 represents VLAN 5, you will also use 5 down here. With that now, you can do the IP address in 192.168.1.1, 255.255.255.0. So you understood why I changed the IP address of here to 2, because if I left it as 1, it would have a conflict coming up there. And you just do a no shutdown and you are good to go. So if you exit now and you do a show IP interface brief, you'll actually see the virtual interface here, but we cannot ping the virtual interface until we put in the default gateway, and the default gateway will be the IP address of that virtual interface. So therefore if I come here and I do a ping 192.168.1.1, I still will not be able to ping. You know why I would not be able to ping? Because by default we have set up that virtual interface for VLAN 5, and by default with these, the switch itself, all these interfaces are set up on the VLAN 1, so I will not be able to ping. We'll rectify that now. But before I go there, let me set up the virtual interface for the other VLAN. So I'll go config T for config terminal interface fa0/0.10 encapsulation .q and q, name it 10. We do the IP address. I will put a different IP address. I'll use 172.168.1.1 255.255.255.0. No shutdown. I will end and I will show the show IP interface brief. And as you can see, we have the two VLANs here. Now by default, when I configure here, these two devices, immediately once I do the VLANs, we will have that level of connectivity. When this error comes up on your switch, in the event that you make a mistake, or on your router, Control-Shift-6. Name looked up aborted. So let's go into the configuration now of the VLANs. So I'll do VLAN 5. I'll name it Site 5. I'll do VLAN 10. I'll name it Site 10. So you could do show VLANs to make sure everything is up and running. We have the two VLANs here. Now we are going to assign the ports to the VLANs. So we have switch port, interface, range, FA0/2 to 3. Now why I had FA0/2 to 3 here is because the first interface I've used it to connect it for connectivity to the router. So I just use the next two ports afterwards for this network, and then the other additional will be for this network. So do switch port, mode, access, switch port, access, VLAN 5. So while these ports, the ports went down and they will come back up soon. So in the process of doing that, we will configure the other ports also. So interface, FA0, interface range, fast Ethernet 0, fast Ethernet 0/3, no, /4 to 5, switch port, mode, access, switch port, access, VLAN 10. So these interfaces are done and they are coming up now. Now with this whole scenario, you'll actually see that even though they are on different VLANs, different IP address schemes, you will actually have that, you will be able to communicate. And let me just put these IP address within the scheme. Now if I put one here, we're going to have a problem coming up here on the router afterwards when we configure. Oh, it didn't show up here. Okay, well, we may have a conflict of interest coming up here. The ports are up. Okay, it doesn't show any conflict of interest, but I'll put it for 2 and I'll put in the default gateway one time. Okay, close this off, I'll come to this one, I'll put in this one in 172.16.1.3, put in 172.16.1.1. So we'll go back to here now. I'm gonna scroll up, end, show VLAN. So we have all the VLANs, the devices connected and stuff. Let us see if we could ping. So we have everything up and running here. Let us see that we can get that ping effect even though these devices are on 2 different VLANs. So let's see if we can get that connectivity. So I'm going to ping 172.16.1.2. So we're not getting any connectivity. The nice part in networking is that you have to diagnose when you have no connectivity. We have to go back through our steps and make sure that everything is functioning well. Somewhere we went wrong, some configuration wasn't right, and I understand that. Okay, we have this. Let me see if I can ping the 192.168.1.1 network, and I understand what is happening here now. A critical configuration which I left out, and I will show you now. When you are doing VLANs, it is paramount that you configure the interface that is connected to the switch to the router. It must be configured as a trunk, because if it is an access mode, it will work as though, listen, it will tell your router, I am just here to get information from a network. But when you go into trunk mode, what it says is that, listen, send me information, I just passing it along. And here, that is the reason why we are not getting that connectivity. How to configure a trunk? It's easy. Config T, interface, FA0/1, switch port, mode, trunk. And basically, we have created the trunk connectivity here now. So you see, as you continue doing things, I mean, you will encounter errors. We are not perfect, but once you understand the whole workings and the steps that you take to get to VLANs, you will rectify problems quickly. So while these interfaces are up, well, while this one is configuring to come up, I'll check, make sure all the PCs. Oh, let me put in an IP address here for this one time. And what I wanted to say earlier on is that if I do 1.1 here, I would have gotten the error because it is in trunk mode. So basically what happens is that the PC is already connecting to the router, which the router has an interface, and the interface is a network, and therefore we assign 1.1 as the IP address for the network's interface. So therefore we cannot use it. I'll use 1.2, but that one is in use already, so we have to use 3. Okay, so with this now we'll be able to ping 172.16.1.2. we will be able to ping straight across. Right, so you see we actually got that connectivity. Why it didn't come up immediately? Because you know with the router you have ARPA and stuff. This first packet and stuff it dropped, but we got 3 pings afterwards. So basically with this here is router on a stick, and what it does, it allows you to connect it allows devices on separate VLANs to communicate with each other. If you want to see the show running, we had a problem here, duplicate address. That was from the switch. We do show running configuration. You will see the interfaces, the virtual interfaces, and basically that is it. The switch, if you go to the switch now and you do show running config, to bring out the word completely you just press tab. You will see all the interfaces that we have configured. We have trunk, VLAN 5, VLAN 5, VLAN 10, VLAN 10. All these others are just by default on VLAN 1. So even if we connect a new device here, that device will not be able to communicate because we haven't configured an interface on the router for the VLAN 1. Therefore by default it will not work. Alright folks, I hope this video was informative. You can like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.